PlayStation Studios is making a big move towards expanding its already impressive library of first-party content by acquiring another development studio, Firewalk Studios. The studio hasn't yet released its debut title, but PlayStation seems intrigued by whatever progress is being made. Firewalk Studios was founded a little over 5 years ago by veteran game director Ryan Ellis and former Activision CFO Tony Hsu. There haven't been any concrete details on its debut title aside from it being lauded as a AAA multiplayer game for PlayStation. Hsu and Ellis say they've been supported by Sony since 2021, but this recent acquisition by PlayStation Studios shows an increased level of investment that may mean good things for whatever game the studio is currently developing. The announcement came via the head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Hulst. The official statement, sadly, still doesn't give interested parties any clue into what exactly it is Firewalk is working on right now. But it does say the studio is creating inspiring worlds grounded in exceptional gameplay. The history of Firewalk's founders working within the Destiny franchise is certainly an encouraging indicator that a large-scale world with exceptional multiplayer gameplay can be made. Ryan Ellis, one of the founders of Firewalk Studios, previously worked at Bungie as the technical art director for Destiny and the creative director for Destiny 2. He also has credits for Halo Reach, Star Wars The Force Unleashed, and multiple Oddworld titles. Tony Hsu, the other Firewalk founder alongside Ellis, worked on the finance end of Activision for more than 7 years. Everything surrounding Firewalk Studios and its new partnership by PlayStation is pure speculation from outside viewers as of right now. Sony is definitely invested in expanding its multiplayer content moving forward, which was made abundantly clear by its announcement last year to launch at least 10 live service games by 2026. Its single-player catalog is one of the most fearsome in the industry right now, with franchises like God of War, Horizon, and Spider-Man. Not to mention the ever-expanding popularity of The Last of Us series. Multiplayer hasn't been a major focus of its first-party titles in the past, though, and it seems as though this upcoming game from Firewalk is one of PlayStation's attempts to fill in that gap. Being one of the biggest publishers on the planet, it's only natural that PlayStation also seems as though it has at least some form of a plan. Now, in the past, PlayStation's plan may have been a tad misguided, like that time the PS3 retailed for $499 to $599, but it still had a plan. For the last decade or so, PlayStation's plan has led to the creation of multiple AAA first-party exclusives, the vast majority of which have gone on to be some of the biggest franchises in gaming right now. But that might all be about to change. PlayStation acquiring new first-party studios is nothing new. For decades, PlayStation has been slowly grabbing talented dev teams and tasking them with producing high-quality exclusives, and in the last few years, it seems to have really ramped this up. In 2022 alone, PlayStation acquired at least 4 video game studios, including the heavy hitter, ex-Halo developer Bungie. And with the recent announcement that PlayStation has just acquired Firewalk Studios, it seems as though PlayStation's new plan is about to come to fruition. Back in April 2021, over 2 years ago now, Firewalk Studios announced that it was partnering with PlayStation to produce a AAA multiplayer project. At the time, this seemed a little odd, as Firewalk Studios was a fairly new studio that had never produced a game before. Established in 2018, Firewalk Studios is headed up by 3 core members. The first of these, and the studio head of Firewalk, is Tony Hsu, the previous general manager and senior vice president of Destiny, responsible for much of the franchise's strategic plan. It now boasts almost 150 employees. Firewalk is the 20th developer to join PlayStation Studios. Ryan Ellis is another founding member of Firewalk, taking on the role of game director for its current unannounced project. Ellis previously worked as a creative director over at Bungie. And finally, Elena Siegman, an executive producer at Firewalk, had extensive experience in the games industry prior to joining the company, working with Irrational Games, Harmonix, and Bungie. We've had the privilege of working with Probably Monsters and Firewalk for several years, and our teams share the same ambition to create meaningful experiences for gamers, said head of PlayStation Studios Herman Hulst. Firewalk's innovative approach to connected storytelling and its commitment to high-quality gameplay continues to exceed our expectations. I think fans will be very pleased when they see what Firewalk has in store for them. Studio head Tony Su added, "We've assembled an amazing team at Firewalk Studios, built specifically to bring memorable multiplayer experiences to players around the world. SIE has supported our team's vision from the beginning and with the incredible creative power of the PlayStation Studio ecosystem. This exciting next step will help us transform that vision into a reality." The acquisition is part of PlayStation's push into live service games, with 10 projects currently in development. Firewalk Studios is led by a world-class team that is highly experienced and deeply passionate about creating exceptional multiplayer games that foster memorable shared experiences, stated Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO and President Jim Ryan. "I'm confident the studio's upcoming project will be a robust addition to PlayStation Studios' portfolio. And its live service and technology expertise will be instrumental in helping grow PlayStation's reach. Firewalk will no longer be part of Probably Monsters, which was founded by CEO Harold Ryan, former Bungie CEO, President and Chairman, and is all about building sustainable teams making original AAA games. Probably Monsters is incredibly proud of the team and the game we incubated and built over the past few years," said Ryan. Firewalk Studios joining PlayStation Studios is a brilliant move for the team, game, and future players. "Our goal at Probably Monsters is to find the best path to market for all of our games, and we couldn't be happier for the Firewalk team. Along with the rest of the studio's talented team, Firewalk is well-versed in all things online multiplayer. When taking all of that into consideration, acquiring Firewalk Studios seems like a logical progression of PlayStation's current big plan." While Sony has stated that single-player exclusives are still going to be a big part of its future lineup, the company has also stated that it's looking to add a few multiplayer games to its roster. With Firewalk having an extensive amount of experience in this field, this recent acquisition makes complete sense. But what's interesting is that Firewalk was already making this exclusive multiplayer game for PlayStation. This partnership has already been in place since 2021, and PlayStation would have had this Firewalk title without acquiring the studio. This acquisition could point to the sheer scale of PlayStation's current multiplayer plan. PlayStation has already made a few statements over the last year or so stating that it's focusing now on adding some live-service multiplayer games to its lineup. With PlayStation acquiring Firewalk, it could suggest that Firewalk's multiplayer game will be one such live-service title. With the acquisition meant to secure the developers' efforts for the next few years while they finish the game, and continue to add content to it over time. It falls in line with the similar acquisition of Haven Studios, and Deviation Games could be next. With the live service model being under more scrutiny than ever right now, this decision might end up being quite a controversial one on PlayStation's part, but only time will tell. Hope they don't cut costs on their single-player games, if some of these games indeed become successful. Capcom is giving gamers a chance to try out Street Fighter VI before its release. 2023 is looking to be a great year for fighting game fans, with a good amount of titles and DLC releasing soon. One of the biggest fighting game releases coming this year is Street Fighter VI. The title will be one of the many June game releases, starting off the summer for many fans of the genre. Though the game has already had a beta this year, players will get another chance to play the next entry in the legendary universe before it drops. Capcom announced that a demo for Street Fighter VI will let gamers try out the title sooner than later, at the Capcom Showcase 2023. The demo is currently available for PS4 and PS5, and will come to PC and Xbox Series X and S on April 26. The trial will allow players to try World Tour mode along with a few modes in Fighting Ground. The demo will also grant gamers access to the avatar creator in Street Fighter VI, which allows players to build their own character. Avatars built in the trial will carry over to the full version of the title, though any progress made in World Tour mode will not. It was also revealed that 4 DLC fighters will be released during Street Fighter VI's first year. The 4 characters are Rashid from Street Fighter V, a newcomer named AKI, Ed from Street Fighter IV, and Street Fighter villain Akuma. Rashid will release in the summer of 2023, AKI in autumn of 2023, Ed in winter of 2024, and Akuma in spring 2024. The fighters will appear in the World Tour mode and will have their move sets available for custom-made characters. The Street Fighter VI showcase revealed an array of new features and gameplay elements of Capcom's latest installment of the franchise. The 30-minute long showcase touched upon game modes like World Tour, Battle Hub, and Fighting Ground, with special news at the end. Luckily, PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 players can now download the Street Fighter VI demo from the PlayStation Store for free. The demo version of the game features early gameplay from World Tour and a few modes in Fighting Ground. However, players must note that the former's progress will not be carried over to the fully released version, but their avatar's appearance will, provided it's on the same platform. Searching for and downloading demos on PlayStation has always been a bit complicated since they don't separately show up on the PS Store. However, players can easily download the Street Fighter VI demo from the PlayStation Store by following a few simple steps. Upon clicking the download demo option from the demo page, the game's trial version will get added to the player's library and start downloading. However, players must make sure that they have at least 16 GB worth of free space on their console since the demo version size is 15.56 GB. The Street Fighter VI demo starts with a cutscene at the Buckler Security Services and an introduction by Luke, the coach. Players are then required to create a character for themselves. The character creation menu features extensive customization options with the ability to blend face presets and even customize features like body hair quantity and quality. Next, players are given a quick tutorial on the combat mechanics. Once it is over, the protagonist is introduced to his rival and classmate, Bosch, in the form of a flashy cutscene. The two are then pitted against each other in a fight, post which the Metro City becomes free to explore. As a part of the free roam experience, one can go around the city and take on a mission, fight citizens, including gang members wearing cardboard boxes as headgear, get food, interact with NPCs, and more. The entire World Tour demo walkthrough lasts for approximately 25 to 35 minutes, depending on how much the player explores. The Fighting Ground game mode features 5 different options for players to choose from: Arcade, Practice, Versus, Special Match and Online. Since this is a demo version, only 2 stages, Genbu Temple and Training Room, are available. Additionally, 2 characters out of the entire roster, Luke and Ryu, can be selected as of now. Xbox and PC players will need to wait a bit more to be able to download the demo, as it will be made available on both platforms on April 26, 2023. Earlier this year it was announced that Street Fighter VI will be at EVO 2023. It will be one of 8 titles at the event, which also includes Guilty Gear Strive, King of Fighters 15, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. EVO 2023 will take place August 4th to 6th at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, the venue that usually hosts the tournament. It will be a great chance to see the beginning of the competitive scene for Street Fighter VI soon after its release, as the event will be the first major outing for the title. It will be good to see the game's early meta and hopefully some great matches that fans can enjoy. Speaking of Street Fighter, Capcom has announced that it's greenlight a new live-action Street Fighter movie and TV program. The game's publisher will be partnering with production firm Legendary Entertainment. The company's filmography includes Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong. The company strongly believes that adapting its game content into movies and television shows provides opportunities to build awareness of its brands with a wide audience that extends beyond the game market, said Capcom. The new Street Fighter projects are announced as video games grow their cross-media efforts. Capcom's newest installment within its fighting franchise, Street Fighter VI, is set to launch on June 2nd. The first gameplay trailer for developer Drama's tactical bodycam shooter Unrecord has gamers divided over the game's realistic visuals and police-centric storyline. The visually stunning shooter is one of many recently announced Unreal Engine 5 games with a visual style designed to replicate footage from a camera. The first clips of Unrecord were released in late 2022 before the game had an official title, making waves online as gamers debated whether the lifelike visuals on display were actually in-game or pre-rendered footage. Though little information about the game has been released so far, the FAQ for Unrecorded describes it as a narrative game that takes inspiration from realistic FPS games. While it's unsurprising to see games like the police tactical shooter Ready or Not listed as one of Unrecord's influences based on the footage released to date, the developers also cite the acclaimed Campo Santo narrative adventure title, Firewalk, as a key influence. Just over 6 months after the first footage of the Unreal Engine 5 game caused a stir online, a gameplay trailer for Unrecord has been posted to Twitter by developer Alexander Spindler, giving gamers a better look at what they can expect from the unique tactical shooter. The short trailer opens with an officer walking towards a derelict building, checking their weapon before heading inside to track down a suspect. The startlingly lifelike gameplay footage shows the officer killing several suspects as they work their way through the building before reaching what looks like an interrogation segment that is quickly cut off by a trailer-ending explosion. The trailer is visually stunning throughout, with high-quality lighting and textures that sometimes make it nearly indistinguishable from real camera footage. Responses to the realistic gameplay footage were decidedly mixed, with responses split between those awed by the stunning visuals and others who felt troubled by the content of the game. Several responses complimented the developers on what they've been able to achieve with the game's graphics even at this early stage, with one comment stating that, "The fact this isn't recorded footage is mind-boggling." Other users were uncomfortable with the game's subject matter, calling Unrecord an unironic propaganda live leak simulator. Another comment stated that they enjoy games as an escape from a world where we see posts every single day of people just getting ended. From this perspective, adding that they don't want to be the perpetrator of such acts. While the visuals in Unrecord are undoubtedly impressive, releasing a bodycam-style shooter at a time when real-world bodycam footage of police ending the lives of civilians is a mainstay of the nightly news is likely to be seen as highly problematic by many gamers. It remains to be seen whether the real-world controversies around policing in America will impact Unrecord sales upon release, but, judging from responses to the trailer, it's clear that some players would prefer to avoid stepping into the shoes of police in video games if given the choice. The game looks really impressive, but need to see if the final product matches this, or they are just smoke and mirrors. I'm looking forward to it. UK's Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, has announced that it has blocked Microsoft's pending Activision Blizzard acquisition. The news comes after months of investigation where the UK regulator was set to announce findings on the $68.7 billion Microsoft deal within this week. Though now following CMA's decision, it appears that the Activision buyout may pose a bigger challenge for Microsoft in the coming months. Microsoft has been pushing hard to get the green light from regulators over its pending acquisition, particularly with the CMA. Over the past couple of months, the Xbox maker made exclusive 10-year deals with the likes of Nvidia, Nintendo, Boosteroid, and Ubisoft in hopes of winning the regulators' favor. Microsoft even ran full-page ads about its Activision purchase in UK newspapers as part of the company's efforts. While it has seemingly swayed several regulatory bodies in other markets, the CMA has ruled against Microsoft despite the company's best efforts at convincing otherwise. Following months of analyzing many documents and arguments from stakeholders, the UK's regulator declared that it has blocked Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Last month, CMA issued its provisional findings on the Activision deal stating that it won't substantially lessen competition in relation to console gaming, and that withholding IPs like Call of Duty from PlayStation would outweigh any gains. However, at the time the CMA also mentioned that concerns regarding Microsoft's cloud gaming dominance remained. In its final report, the regulator highlights that a major part of its decision to block the deal is due to Microsoft's failure to address CMA's cloud gaming concerns should the acquisition go ahead. According to the CMA, the Xbox maker already holds 60 to 70% of the global market share when it comes to cloud gaming services, and the regulator believes the deal would only reinforce Microsoft cloud gaming dominance by giving control over franchises like Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Warcraft. The regulator further points out that as per available evidence, Activision would start providing games via cloud platforms in the foreseeable future without the merger. As of now, executives from both Microsoft and Activision have commented on CMA's decision and have stated it will be appealed. Microsoft President Brad Smith claims that CMA's decision rejects a pragmatic path to address competition concerns, and that it discourages technology innovation and investment in the United Kingdom. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick expressed similar sentiments, confirming the company will contest the decision alongside Microsoft. The CEO also indicated that the company has already begun to work on the appeal to the UK Competition Appeal Tribunal. The UK regulator's decision comes as a huge blow to Microsoft's aggressive push to close the deal. Interestingly, it may face harsher opposition in the US with the FTC's ongoing efforts at blocking the deal. While it was earlier hinted that Microsoft is reportedly going to complete the Activision acquisition without FTC green light, things might turn out more challenging for the Xbox maker. The CMA also raised the question of whether future Call of Duty games could run on the Nintendo Switch and its successor, which will lead to a compromised experience. In any case, it will be interesting to see how things pan out for Microsoft as the tech giant continues to double down on its Activision buyout efforts. Activision Blizzard stock is down 11.19% today so far, with the stock currently priced at $77.03. This is certainly bad news for anyone who currently owns stock in the video game publishing giant. But it's an expected reaction after the UK Competition and Markets Authority, CMA, blocked Microsoft's attempted acquisition of the company. Microsoft President Brad Smith has heavily criticized the UK regulator and says that the decision to block its Activision Blizzard acquisition will discourage innovation and investment in the country. Speaking during the BBC's Wake Up to Money, Smith stopped short of saying Microsoft would cut investment in the UK, but admitted that the company's confidence is shaken. Microsoft is a major business that operates in the UK, and in terms of video games, it operates a number of UK studios, including Rare, Playground Games and Ninja Theory. I think it's bad for Britain, Smith said. The business community, the investment community and the technology sector around the world have been following this case. And the strong message that the CMA has sent is not just to surprise everyone who fully expected this acquisition to be approved, but to send a message that will discourage innovation and investment in the United Kingdom. And I think in that sense the impact of this decision is far broader than on Microsoft or this acquisition alone. He added, Microsoft has been in the United Kingdom for 40 years and we play a vital role, not just supporting businesses and non-profits but even defending the nation from cybersecurity threats. But this decision, I have to say, is probably the darkest day in our 4 decades in Britain. It does more than shake our confidence in the future of the opportunity to grow a technology business in Britain than we've ever confronted before. Smith reiterated that the decision, in his view, was based on a flawed understanding of cloud streaming, and believed the firm's offer to allow other services to stream its games as a more than adequate solution to the regulator's concerns. It's all about a potential concern about what could become the cloud streaming of games, like you see the streaming of movies on a network like Netflix, he added. But this business is so small today, that Microsoft can't even stream games to more than 5,000 people at a time in the entirety of the United Kingdom. So for regulators to step in and seek to torpedo a $68 billion global traction out of a concern of a part of the business that is so small, and to reject so many proposals to try and address their concern, it leaves people worried and it leaves people thinking that, actually, the process in Brussels worked far better than what we are now addressing in London. Smith repeated that Microsoft believes that Europe is now a friendlier place to operate a tech business, although the EU is also adopting a strong regulatory stance on digital and tech. It also has yet to approve the proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard. I am optimistic that the European Commission will continue to go forward, as it has signaled in recent weeks and months. That it will regard the very promises that the CMA has rejected as far more appropriate, he stated. It is all about being pragmatic. Don't we want regulators to be pragmatic? Don't we want regulators to actually talk to the people they're regulating? Don't we want regulators to look for solutions rather than reasons to block people moving forward? Indeed, Smith was particularly critical of the CMA process, and suggested that Europe's approach is far more reasonable. We thought we had answered every question that the CMA panel had put to us. And we specifically said, if you have any other questions or concerns, please let us know. We want to address them. But they went silent. We heard nothing from them. This is not the way regulators in Brussels work with companies. You have more of a conversation. Investments flow to places where people have confidence in the way laws and regulations work. And for all of us who had some hope that post-Brexit the UK would construct a constructor that would be more flexible, better for investment, better for technology, we're finding the opposite is true. He added, what is most striking to me is that the English Channel has never seemed wider in terms of Europe as a continent being attractive to investment, and Brussels being a place where one can sit down and have a conversation with the regulators who are accountable to the elected leaders. And the difference we now confront in London, where we have regulators who are not only unelected and unaccountable and now making decisions that are fundamentally unwise. In a message to the Prime Minister, he added, if the government of the United Kingdom wants to bring in investment, if it wants to create jobs, and if it wants to make the United Kingdom a home where technology is not only going to flourish, but be creative, Then it needs to look hard at the role of the CMA, this regulatory structure in the United Kingdom, this transaction and the message that the United Kingdom has just sent to the world. Because I can tell you, while I might have a point of view that is based in part on an interest our company has, I have heard from a great many around the world. People are shocked, people are disappointed, and people's confidence in technology in the United Kingdom has been severely shaken. Ultimately, Smith says, people may be reluctant to start companies in the UK if they feel the UK regulator would block their efforts to sell or merge their companies, if and when the time comes. The European Union is a more attractive place to start a business if you want someday to sell it, than in the United Kingdom. This was the bottom line of Microsoft. The chief executive of the CMA pushed back on this and said that the decision was right to keep the competition in this marketplace. And it was rightful to block the deal, because Microsoft already has a dominant position in the cloud market. Microsoft once had a much more openly antagonistic relationship with antitrust regulators and nearly had to break up its business in the 1990s. However, the company switched tactics in the 2000s, taking a more conciliatory and cooperative approach. Microsoft's reputation as a more reasonable corporation may have helped it slip under the radar. However, that doesn't seem to have worked this time. The CMA's decision may also have an impact on Microsoft's upcoming FTC trial, with the CMA's chief executive noting that the two agencies were in alignment on the issue. There was also a documentation mentioning that Microsoft wanted 100% of the money from the cloud store fronts like Nvidia, instead giving a 30% cut. Everyone in Microsoft is literally shattered, and Phil Spencer might get fired soon. The UK's CMA was expected to approve Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, so it came as a shock when it did the exact opposite on April 26, blocking the sale over cloud gaming concerns. The surprise decision to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard has sent the latter company's stock plummeting, whereas Microsoft's stock is actually up by over 7%. Activision stock is in flux, it's down 11.19% and priced at $77.03. Even if Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard never goes through, the company's stock will likely still bounce back at some point. After all, Call of Duty games are consistently the top-selling games every year, and the company has some other major projects in the pipeline, including a new IP from Blizzard, the full release of Overwatch 2, and the upcoming Diablo 4. Or the opposite could happen, whereas the developers are leaving in droves. I'm glad they blocked the deal, because consolidation is not good in this current state of the world. It'll be frustrating to hear this drag out for maybe another 2 years, if they appeal, or Microsoft should pay Activision Blizzard $3 billion, and the contract expires on this late June. They could money hat and bribe the CMA. Microsoft has a lot of political, economical, and technical influence around the world and has deep pockets. Microsoft can, at any point, decide to cancel its planned acquisition of Activision Blizzard. However, this will come with a hefty cost. The UK CMA has said it will not approve the acquisition. The European Commission is currently doing an in-depth investigation, with a deadline of April 5 for its final decision. The FTC has scheduled a hearing for its legal complaint in front of an administrative judge to begin on August 2, 2023. I think Google, Amazon, and Apple are also behind the back doors because of the involvement of mobile and cloud. If it scraps the deal before January 18, 2023, Microsoft will need to pay a penalty fee of $2 billion. This increases to $3 billion by April 18. The question is whether the cost of legalities and other proceedings, as well as the benefits of owning Activision Blizzard, outweighs these costs. Let's wait and see what happens. Speaking of Activision Blizzard just released its latest earnings report, revealing that the company made $2.38 billion in revenue over the past 3 months with a profit of $740 million. In comparison, the mega publisher pulled in $1.76 billion in revenue and $395 million in profit in the same period last year. Additionally, Activision Blizzard reportedly has $9.236 billion in cash and equivalents on hand. $580 million came from the Activision half of the company, as Modern Warfare 2 has not only set some of its own records, but is also facing an easier than usual comparison against the prior year's Call of Duty Vanguard, while $443 million was brought in from Blizzard. The primary breadwinner for Activision Blizzard in this report was King, the mobile company behind hit games like Candy Crush Saga and Rebel Riders. According to the latest report, King raked in $739 million over this quarter, resulting in mobile platforms being the #1 source of revenue with $956 million in total. PC platforms fell into second place with $666 million in revenue, followed by consoles at $639 million. Digital platforms were also a massive boon for Activision Blizzard during this period, drawing in $2.157 billion in revenue. Physical retail brought the company $104 million, and the remaining $122 million has been categorized as other. When it comes to individual franchises, Call of Duty was naturally a big winner for Activision Blizzard, with overall sales jumping significantly from the same period last year thanks to the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 in October. Meanwhile, November's World of Warcraft Dragonflight reportedly boosted player counts to the highest levels Blizzard has seen for a modern World of Warcraft expansion. In terms of active users, Activision reported 98 million, Blizzard 27 million, and King 243 million, resulting in a grand total of 368 million. Blizzard's monthly active users were up 23% year-over-year, but down 40% quarter-over-quarter. Candy Crush was the top-grossing game franchise in U.S. app stores for the 23rd consecutive quarter, the company said. King saw 243 million monthly active users for the quarter, down 3% year-over-year but up 4% quarter-over-quarter. Looking ahead, Activision Blizzard expects at least high teens year-over-year growth for GAAP revenue in 2023. With second quarter GAAP revenue growing at least 10% and net bookings jumping at least 30%. As for what might drive some of those numbers, the company cited strong pre-sales and demand for Diablo 4, which is scheduled to launch June 6. Microsoft just released its earnings for the 3 months ended March 31, 2023, Q3 FY23, showing a steep decline in hardware sales and a dip in total gaming revenues. Microsoft revenue was $52.9 billion, up 7% year-on-year. Microsoft net income was $18.3 billion, up 9% year-on-year. More personal computing, including Xbox, revenue is $13.26 billion, down 9% YOY. The gaming revenue was down 4%, Xbox content and services revenue is up 3%, but Xbox hardware revenue dooms down to a massive 30%. CEO Satya Nadella shared that revenue from gaming subscriptions reached nearly $1 billion within the quarter, with Game Pass extended to 40 new countries during that period. He added that the firm has surpassed 500 million lifetime unique users across its first-party titles as well, and that the company has reached record numbers for Q3 in terms of monthly active users when it comes to gaming, which could be misleading considering it also counts the players on PlayStation and Nintendo. CFO Amy Hood gave more details on the financial results within the gaming category, saying that the 4% decline in revenue was ahead of expectations. Xbox hardware revenue declined 30% and 28% in constant currency on a high prior year comparable that benefited from increased console supply, she added. It's worth noting that, in Europe, Xbox Series X and S console sales were down 10% during the first quarter of the calendar year 2023. As for the slight increase in Xbox content and services revenue, Hood said it was driven by better-than-expected monetization in third-party and first-party content and growth in Xbox Game Pass. 7% growth across the entire company was attributed to Microsoft Cloud in the context of the rise of AI. Microsoft Cloud revenue reached $28.5 billion and was up 22% year-on-year. Looking ahead, Hood said she expected gaming to grow in the mid to high single digits during Q4, adding, "We expect Xbox content services revenue growth in the low to mid-teens, driven by third-party and first-party content as well as Xbox Game Pass. It is really disappointing to see Microsoft pursuing buying publishers, rather than cultivating talent and make great games. It is time for Xbox to go third-party or sell their division and most of their IPs and not mess up gaming." A product designer at Valve stated in a recent interview that the company is currently developing a new VR headset. Valve entered the VR marketplace in 2019 with the release of the Valve Index but has since seemingly put its hardware efforts behind the Steam Deck. Valve is the company most synonymous with modern PC gaming, a reputation it has earned for running the digital storefront Steam and developing landmark PC games like the Half-Life and Portal series. The company has turned more toward hardware developments in recent years with the release of the aforementioned Valve Index and, in 2022, the Steam Deck. The Index faced steep competition from the Oculus and HTC Vive lines of headsets. Despite this, Valve appeared to be quietly continuing its VR efforts, as indicated by last year's filing of a patent for a new Valve VR controller. While most of Valve's recent work in hardware has revolved around the Steam Deck. An interview that product designer Greg Coomer did with Korean website This Is Game shows that its VR efforts are far from over. In the interview, Coomer states that Valve has been working on a VR headset but is not able to comment on any specifics. Regardless, he affirmed VR as an avenue that Valve will continue pursuing. This could imply that the rumors of Half-Life Alyx coming to PSVR 2 could be true or that other Valve VR games are in development. There is also a patent that I covered a few weeks ago about the next Valve VR controller, so this could be true. With the recent hardware revisions spotted by new Steam Deck owners, it appears that Valve is pursuing its hardware developments even further. However, the Steam Deck's success is partly thanks to its launching at a comparatively lower price point compared to other handheld PC options. With gamers having to pay $1,000 for the full Valve Index kit, it faces strong competition from other headsets that are available at lower prices. With the release of the Steam Deck, Valve seems to have learned that by offering a more affordable, user-friendly experience with its products, it can fulfill a niche previously left unchecked. This has in turn inspired the development of Steam Deck competitors like the Asus ROG Ally. Valve is in a good position to take what it has learned from the success of the Steam Deck and apply it to its VR endeavors in both hardware and software. With the Valve Index being close to 4 years old, a follow-up to the headset can find major success if done right. Staff from VR game developers Ready at Dawn and Downpour Interactive are among those affected by the latest round of mass layoffs at Meta. Last month, the Facebook firm announced it would lay off 10,000 staff by the end of 2023. This followed an additional 11,000 job cuts announced in November. The next round of layoffs began this week, with employees from Ready at Dawn and Downpour Interactive revealing they had been let go via Twitter. Among those affected at Ready at Dawn were technical designer Colin McInerney and senior engine/graphics programmer Thomas Griebel, who claimed 1/3 of the studio was laid off today, including the studio head. Downpour's senior designer Michael Tsaruhas and studio-level designer Don Van Zelst both indicated they were among those dismissed from that company. Meta acquired Ready at Dawn in 2020, purchasing Downpour a year later. Ready at Dawn is best known as the developer for VR series Lone Echo, as well as various PlayStation exclusives such as the Order 1886 and the God of War titles for PSP. Meanwhile, Downpour Interactive created VR military simulator shooter Onward. I saw some joining Santa Monica Studio, back with their mama, and I hope the other gets placed in the industry as well. It was huge missed opportunity for PlayStation not to acquire Ready at Dawn back in the day, could have made them another God of War team. It's been reported that parent company Microsoft has not been thrilled about the state of its popular gaming brand Xbox in recent months, which is obvious to the gaming community. Xbox started the year off with Hi-Fi Rush Shadow dropping at its developer direct in January. Tango Gameworks' stylish third-person action rhythm game was critically acclaimed and remains a colorful feather in Xbox's cap. With other major first-party titles planned for this year like the recently released Minecraft Legends, Arcane's Redfall next month, the Bethesda behemoth that is Starfield in September, Forza Motorsport, and possibly more in the fall, Xbox and its fans were ready to potentially enjoy its biggest year of games in a very long time. However, several key developments in recent weeks have taken the wind out of Xbox's sails in April. On his Game Mess podcast, industry journalist Jeff Grubb reported that Microsoft isn't happy with the current state of Xbox. He mentions Xbox's dry 2022 as a key factor and that players who bought Series X or S consoles may be regretting their purchases. Last year saw Xbox Game Studios release only 4 smaller projects in Forza Horizon 5 Hot Wheels DLC, the 1.0 release of Grounded, Age of Empires 4 Anniversary Edition, and Pentiment. Obsidian's Pentiment in particular was a critical darling, but Xbox's severe lack of AAA output in 2022 was still disappointing for many Xbox fans. Jeff Grubb's report comes just a week after confirmation that Redfall will only be playable in 30 frames per second upon launch rather than the industry standard of 60 FPS, which will become available at a later date. This news has thrown a wrench in Redfall's momentum, with many fans calling for a second delay and questioning why the game can only run at 30 FPS on Xbox's premium Series X console even after its initial year-long delay. Another contributing factor could be the fact that Xbox's rival PlayStation has been dominating the console market since its inception, and the fact that Microsoft couldn't beat Sony to the living room for the past 20 years. Toss in Xbox's inadequate marketing efforts and games of all shapes and sizes from Final Fantasy XVI to Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals skipping the console, it's clear that Xbox is in a rough spot right now. Speaking during an April 20th episode of his podcast, the established industry insider said Hi-Fi Rush didn't make the money it needed to make, citing unnamed sources. Grubb speculated that this lackluster performance could be attributed to the fact that Hi-Fi Rush was available on Xbox Game Pass from day one. Though the launch itself was unexpected, the game's immediate addition to the subscription service was a given, as Tango Gameworks is owned by Microsoft subsidiary ZeniMax Media. While this insider account did not go into any more details concerning the commercial performance of Hi-Fi Rush, the claim of lackluster sales does suggest that the game's publisher might be reluctant to try surprise releases in the near future without any marketing. Xbox has always been terrible in marketing and games output since the end of the 360 era. This newly surfaced insider account further underlines how Xbox Game Pass can cannibalize game sales. Hi-Fi Rush might be a good game, but launching it in a subscription service day and date, shadow dropping it, and it didn't feature on any sales charts like NPD, Japanese or the European charts really showed why these types of practices leads to less surety that the game gets a sequel. And that's why they are going after publishers like Activision Blizzard and ZeniMax to increase that portfolio to boost subscriptions. But I don't think it'll be enough, because it would need at least 200 million subscribers to actually fund the games and also sustain the model. Microsoft right now is bleeding money with the Xbox hardware and the Game Pass subscription model. One of the earliest creative leaders in the Halo series is now leading the development of a new AAA title at Netflix Games. Netflix is most well known for its triumphs in streaming, but it has continued to bolster its gaming division, recently bringing former Overwatch producer Chaco Sonny to lead the Netflix game studio in Los Angeles late last year. Netflix has long been one of the most recognizable names in streaming and has put more effort into strengthening its gaming division in recent years. It has opened several game studios and acquired indie developers such as Spryfox and Night School Studio. Outside of this, some mobile games such as Valiant Hearts Coming Home have launched on the Netflix mobile app, where other titles such as Into the Breach and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge can be played by Netflix subscribers. Netflix's moves in game development have continued with the news that Joseph Staton, an early creative leader in the Halo series, has joined Netflix Games as a creative director and will be developing both a AAA multi-platform game and an original property. Staton enthusiastically announced this on Twitter, with many gamers glad to see him joining the team soon after this month's reveal that he was leaving his position as head of creative of Halo Infinite at 343 Industries, ending a roughly 20-year journey with Halo. Given Staton's long history with the Halo franchise and the inclusion of former Overwatch producer Chaco Sonny, it has been speculated that one of the new titles from Netflix Games will be a first-person shooter. With the wealth of properties Netflix has under its belt, it is possible that one of Netflix's new games could be based on shows such as The Umbrella Academy or Stranger Things, the latter of which has previously been adapted into mobile games. However, the announcement of an original IP shows that there will likely be more announcements coming soon. Staton, who left Halo Studio 343 Industries 2 weeks ago, announced via Twitter yesterday that he is new creative director at Netflix Games, working on an original IP that will be debut as a multi-platform AAA game. Staton worked as director of cinematics at Bungie on the first 3 Halo games, as assisted with narrative elements of Halo Wars and Halo 3 ODST, before working on Destiny after Bungie cut ties with Microsoft. He later rejoined Microsoft Studios in 2014, and in 2020 joined 343 Industries as campaign project lead for Halo Infinite, later becoming head of creative for that game. Staton's hire is announced alongside Microsoft's confirmation that long-serving franchise director Frank O'Connor has also left. His departure was first noticed by Windows Central and later confirmed to Axios' Stephen Totilo, with a Microsoft spokesperson telling the latter, "We thank Frank for his numerous contributions to the Halo franchise and wish him well going forward." O'Connor has been working on Halo since 2004, initially sticking with Bungie to work on Destiny but returning to Microsoft in 2008. He worked not only on the games, but also novelizations and the Halo TV series for Paramount+. Staton and O'Connor are the latest in a string of departures from the Halo team. With 343 founder Bonnie Ross stepping down in September and at least 95 staff laid off from the studio in January as part of 10,000 Microsoft redundancies. Last year also saw the departure of Halo Infinite's multiplayer creative director, lead multiplayer designer and lead narrative designer, with the creative and project directors leaving the studio midway through development. And there is gonna be more after the major Activision Blizzard acquisition, with some leads already left. In 2020, 2 members of Team Zacuter were arrested. Max Luarn and Gary Bowser were both part of a worldwide organization which sold chips that allowed users to play pirated games on their consoles. Additionally, a third member, Yuaning Chen, a Chinese national, was also charged but was never arrested while the authorities couldn't extradite Luarn, a French national, to the US. Bowser was charged with 11 felonies, including conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to circumvent technological measures, and trafficking in circumvention devices. Out of those 11 charges, Bowser pleaded guilty to 2 of them and was sentenced to 40 months in prison, as well as a $4.5 million fine, which was later increased by $10 million. At the time, Raymond Duda, FBI special agent in charge Seattle, said, "Imagine if something you invented was stolen from you and then marketed and sold to customers around the world." Recently, podcaster Nick Moses sat down for an interview with Gary Bowser. During their talk, Bowser revealed that he's awaiting processing as he'll be released early for good behavior. While imprisoned, Bowser worked at the prison library and started to repay his fine to Nintendo. For now, he managed to pay $175, which was taken out in $25 monthly installments. Once he finds a new job back in his home country of Canada, Nintendo will continue to take 25% to 30% of his salary as per their agreement. Due to this fact, Bowser will likely have to continue paying Nintendo for the rest of his life. Bowser also alleged he was not one of the leaders of the organization, but its marketing and PR manager. However, the actual leaders continue to evade the authorities. Historically, Nintendo has always dealt with hackers or copyright violations with highly aggressive measures. Those sued in the past have also included modders and influencers. Robert Losnick, district judge during Bowser's trial, reportedly said Nintendo intended the sentence as a message to other hackers. Opinions may be divided within discussions about whether Gary Bowser deserved his sentence or not. Some may regard it as an overreach by Nintendo and some may deem it a fair sentence for what is essentially theft. A surprising new report reveals that sales of the PlayStation 5 have now surpassed sales of the PlayStation 4 at the same period in its lifespan, showing that gamers are eager to get their hands on Sony's latest console. The news comes just months after Sony Interactive Entertainment president Jim Ryan took to the stage at CES 2023 and effectively announced that PS5 console shortages are over, stating that gamers should have a much easier time finding one moving forward. The latest report from market research firm Circana, formerly known as the NPD Group, has revealed that sales of Sony's PlayStation 5 are now outpacing PlayStation 4 sales at the same point in its lifespan. The news was shared by Circana executive director Matt Piscatella as part of a Twitter thread going over Circana's March 2023 US gaming market findings, with Piscatella stating that PS5 sales have now surpassed those of PlayStation 4 on a time-aligned basis, 29 months in market. The thread also noted that the PS5 was the best-selling hardware platform in units and dollars for both March and 2023 as a whole so far. During March, U.S. consumer spending on games reached $4.6 billion, a 5% decline year-over-year, according to the latest Circana data. Software comprised most of the month's revenue, 83%, with game content reaching $3.83 billion in March. However, the segment was down 7% compared to last year's performance. Consumer spending for the month on hardware was up 10% year-over-year as it hit $566 million. Among console sales in the month, Sony's PlayStation 5 was the top-selling platform for both units and dollars. Meanwhile, the Xbox Series XS systems were second in dollar spending, and the Nintendo Switch was second for hardware units sold. Accessory spending grew by 1% year-over-year to a total of $239 million during March. The PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge wireless controller Black was the top-selling gamepad for the month. Capcom's Resident Evil 4 Remake debuted in March as #1 for game sales. Meanwhile, Warner Bros. Hogwarts Legacy reached second, and MLB The Show 23 premiered as the third best-selling title during the month. With The Last of Us Part 1 and God of War Ragnarok is still hanging in there. While Resident Evil 4 and Hogwarts Legacy captured the top 2 spots in March sales, the list was also peppered with several mainstays across multiple consoles. WWE 2K23 was the sole new release outside the top 5 to make the list, securing a number 7 position in the monthly ranking. Other recent releases like Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe and Dead Space 2023 also finished within the top 20, alongside long-running bestsellers like Minecraft and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Capcom has revealed that the Resident Evil 4 Remake has already passed 4 million units sold, making it the second fastest-selling game in the franchise to date. There was a great deal of hype behind the Resident Evil 4 Remake in the months leading up to its release, with many agreeing that it lived up to fans' lofty expectations. With the success of the Resident Evil 4 Remake, it's clear that Capcom's survival horror franchise is showing no signs of slowing down. The Resident Evil 4 Remake is the second fastest-selling game in the series thanks to its selling 4 million copies within its first 2 weeks on sale. The only Resident Evil game that has it beat is Resident Evil 6, despite the fact that RE6 is generally considered to be the worst main series games by many fans. Resident Evil 6 sold 4.5 million units in the same timeframe, putting it just slightly ahead of the Resident Evil 4 Remake. However, there's a good chance that the Resident Evil 4 Remake will pull ahead of Resident Evil 6 in the long run. The Resident Evil 4 Remake has been warmly embraced by fans and is being hailed as one of the best game releases of the year, whereas Resident Evil 6 was not nearly as well received. Time will tell if the Resident Evil 4 Remake is able to topple Resident Evil 6. However, Capcom may be able to draw more people to the remake if it continues to release updates for it that enhance the experience and add new content. Just recently, Capcom released the Mercenaries update for the Resident Evil 4 Remake, giving fans the chance to experience a new version of the fan-favorite bonus game mode, and some controversial pay-to-win elements. Then again, some updates may have the opposite effect and turn fans away from the Resident Evil 4 Remake. For example, Capcom recently introduced controversial microtransactions to the Resident Evil 4 Remake, which may not sit right with everyone. Regardless, the Resident Evil 4 Remake is off to a hot start, and it will be interesting to see if it is able to keep its momentum going strong. Speaking of Resident Evil, Capcom has announced that a number of recent Resident Evil games are being shifted towards legacy status due to their reliance on DirectX 11. While Resident Evil Village and the remake of Resident Evil 4 have both relied on DirectX 12 from day one. Some of the previous mainline RE titles needed to be updated post-launch to achieve the same effect. A switch to DirectX 12 came simultaneously for all of the affected titles when Capcom released updates for some Resident Evil games, namely 2, 4, and 7 in August 2022, the highlight feature of which was the introduction of ray tracing. Though a welcome upgrade, it's worth pointing out that the shift to a newer version of DirectX did not come without its own set of growing pains. As all 3 titles suffered a performance drop compared to their old DirectX 11 versions. The 3 aforementioned Resident Evil games subsequently received an optional legacy DirectX 11 mode on Steam to allow users to play whichever version they wanted, depending on the capabilities of their PC. Curiously enough, Capcom has now confirmed that these DX11 builds of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 7 will no longer receive technical support starting on December 7, 2023. This isn't necessarily a huge issue in and of itself, it's worth pointing out, as the DX11 versions will remain optionally accessible, but it may be a problem in the future. Specifically, Capcom's announcement says that, after technical support has ended, there will be no guarantee that the DX11 versions remain compatible and/or operable. In other words, if something breaks after late 2023, it's going to stay that way indefinitely. Though the recent release of the widely acclaimed Resident Evil 4 is still in its heyday, the older RE titles and remakes remain a compelling option for horror game fans, making this announcement very noteworthy for gamers with lower-spec PCs. There's still no word on what the next Resident Evil remake might be, but the odds are good that Capcom will continue the trend in some respect. With DirectX 11 now fully out of the question, new titles will likely perform similarly to RE Village and the RE4 remake, which may mean leaving older rigs behind for good, in some cases. It's also possible that Capcom may have some future plans for the 3 affected titles, though it's difficult to imagine what those may end up being. Much more likely is that the studio simply doesn't wish to support old legacy builds of its previous games and that it's instead looking to focus on the inevitable Resident Evil 9 and other franchise offerings. Now back to the monthly sales. Capcom's Resident Evil 4 Remake was the best-selling game in Canada in March 2023, the Entertainment Software Association of Canada and NPD Group have revealed. Warner Bros.' massively popular Hogwarts Legacy was February's top seller and was bumped to the 2nd spot in March. What makes Resident Evil 4's success here particularly impressive is the fact that it was released on March 24th, so it only had 1 week to become the month's bestseller. Horror, in general, is also generally more niche than an open-world action-adventure game, one that's based on Harry Potter, no less. Rounding out the top 3 was MLB The Show 23, another new March title. But for the entire year till now, Hogwarts Legacy keeps the #1 spot, and it'll continue to do so. It is actually similar to the US charts. Now, let's move to the European and the UK games charts for the month of March. 13.6 million PC and console games were sold in March across Europe, a slight drop of 4% compared with the same period in 2022. That means for the first quarter of the year, 39 million games have been sold, which is a drop of 11% over last year. This is according to the latest GSD data, which tracks physical games across major European markets, plus digital downloads from most major games publishers. Hogwarts Legacy is comfortably the best-selling game of the quarter, and it is the fastest-selling game in Europe, outside of the FIFA franchise, since the GSD chart started in 2017. Despite this, last year featured a larger number of big releases, including Elden Ring, Pokémon Legends Arceus, Horizon, Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7. Hogwarts may be the biggest game of the quarter, but it was Resident Evil 4 that claimed #1 in March. Capcom's horror remake grabbed the top spot after just 2 weeks on sale. Resident Evil 4's first 2-week sales across Europe was 19% lower than 2021's Resident Evil Village and 11% lower than 2019's Resident Evil 2 remake. But it's up 57% compared with the remake of Resident Evil 3 in 2020. Looking at a more recent horror game, Resident Evil 4's first 2 weeks are up 149% compared with the remake of Dead Space, which was released in January. Also new in March was WWE 2K23, which makes #8. The game's opening sales, first 3 weeks, are down 28% compared with WWE 2K22. Last year's game followed a lengthy gap for the series, which may have benefited its launch due to additional pent-up demand. There is no Nintendo game in the top 10 for March. The highest charting title was actually Metroid Prime Remastered at #11. It's impossible to know how this game truly performed, as it was initially released digitally in February. Nintendo is the main company that doesn't share digital data with the charts company. Console hardware sales were up 67% to 570,000 units sold across selected European countries during March, driven by huge sales for PS5. Across those markets, PS5 sales are up by 5 times in March 2023 compared with the year before. In 2022 there had been severe stock shortages for Sony's console. Switch sales are down 19% across the markets compared with March 2022, while Xbox Series S and X sales are down 13%. For the first quarter of the year, 1.5M consoles have been sold across the selected countries, which is a rise of 41% over the first quarter of last year. PS5 leads the market with a 369% year-on-year sales rise, followed by Switch, down 18%, and then Xbox Series S and X, down 10%. In terms of accessories, 1.5 million add-on products were sold across the markets, a rise of 13% over the year before. This was again because of improved console hardware sales boosting sales of accessories. The best-selling product was the PS5 DualSense controller. For the first quarter of the year, 4.7 million accessories have been sold, which is a rise of over 5% year-on-year. UK sales of video games and consoles rose during the first quarter of the year, according to the latest market data from GSD and GfK. GSD data shows that game sales, including physical and digital downloads, rose 1% compared with the same period last year, with just under 8 million games sold. The success of the software market was driven by Hogwarts Legacy, which is the fastest-selling video game in the UK outside of FIFA and Call of Duty since Red Dead Redemption 2. It has already outsold two of last year's best-selling games, LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga and Elden Ring. The console hardware space is up a substantial 24.2% for the first quarter of the year, GfK data shows. This is due to the PS5, which is now in fully supply but was largely missing from shelves during Q1 last year. PS5 sales are up over 180% for the first 3 months of the year, and Sony's new console accounted for over half the market during the quarter. Nintendo Switch sales decline, down over 25%, which is the number 2 console of the year so far. Xbox Series S and X sales were also down 18% for the first quarter. Delving into the March market data, and sales were actually down a little bit. 2.7 million digital and physical games were sold, GSD data, which is a fall of 3% year-on-year. The Resident Evil 4 remake claimed the number 1 spot, despite launching late in the month. Capcom game didn't sell quite as strongly as the Resident Evil 2 remake or the recent Resident Evil Village, but surpassed the performance of 2020's Resident Evil 3 remake. 65% of Resident Evil 4 sales were on PlayStation platforms, 20% on Xbox and 15% on PC. The horror game's success meant that Hogwarts Legacy had to settle for second spot last month. The next biggest new release is WWE 2K23 at number 4. The game's first 3 weeks of sales were 20% lower than last year's WWE 2K22. However, last year's title was a long time coming, so had more pent-up demand. Next on the new release slate is the new action-adventure game Tkaya at number 6. Just in the top 10 is Metroid Prime Remastered at number 9. Nintendo doesn't share digital data with the charts company, so this is based purely on physical sales. The game actually launched on the Nintendo eShop first in February. In terms of consoles, GfK panel data shows that sales dropped 3% to 138,000 consoles sold versus February. However, it's a jump of 23% over last March. PS5 was the number 1 console of March, although sales did slip ever so slightly, down 2%. The number 2 console was Nintendo Switch, although sales rose, very slightly, in March compared with February. This was helped by a new Super Mario hardware bundle. The Red Switch bundle accounted for 12.8% of all Switch consoles sold last month, behind the White OLED, 23.6%, and the Neon Switch, 26.3%. The next 3 months will be key for Switch, with the launch of the new Super Mario movie, plus The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Xbox Series S and X sales were down by 10%. During March in Japan, the Nintendo Switch climbed back to being the top-selling system after the PlayStation 5 took the spot in the prior month. Famitsu's monthly retail sales data from February 27 to March 26 shows that the console sold 231,000 units across its standard, light, and OLED models. By comparison, Sony's PlayStation 5 hardware hit 223,000 systems sold during the 4 weeks. And Xbox lacking behind the PS4. Nintendo led with 439,000 boxed titles in software sales, outpacing Capcom's 190,000 and Koei Tecmo's 166,000 copies. Kirby Return to Dream Land DX was the biggest selling title of the month at 174,112 moved units. Capcom's newly released Resident Evil 4 Remake debuted at 89,662 copies sold on the PlayStation 5. Meanwhile, the PlayStation 4 version of the title moved 85,371 boxed copies. Both took second and third place as top sellers in March. Regarding physical game units sold during the period, Nintendo had the lion's share at 31.5%. Capcom was second as it commanded 13.6% of copies purchased, while Koei Tecmo was third, with the sales of its boxed titles making up 12% of the market. The PlayStation 5's swift sales are surely welcome news to Sony as the company prepares to release highly anticipated exclusive titles like Final Fantasy XVI, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Wolverine and Death Stranding 2 in the coming years. With industry-leading sales and several high-profile console exclusives set to arrive in the near future, the PlayStation 5 is shaping up to be one of the company's most successful consoles yet. The news is also a win for gamers, with more consoles sold likely translating into increased interest from developers in creating games for the consoles. And therefore the final roundup is, the PS5 is carrying the console games industry and beating the shit out of Xbox. We also have some tidbits of sales information. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection sells 1M units. The collection of 13 action games hit the sales milestone since its August 2022 launch. And Dead Island 2 moves 1 million copies. Dambuster's Zombie Adventure hits the sales figure 3 days after release. A new Omdia report estimates that the lifetime sales count for Valve's Steam Deck will reach over 3 million units in 2023. The research firm also predicts that last year, the handheld PC console sold 1.6 million consoles. The Super Mario Bros. Movie has amassed more than $500 million in global revenue. As reported by Variety, the Nintendo and Illumination film hit the earnings milestone 9 days after releasing in theaters. The movie earned $260.3 million domestically, and it brought in $248.4 million internationally. Variety reported that the Nintendo and Illumination movie performed above expectations and beat the opening weekends of fellow Universal Pictures-produced films such as Jurassic World Dominion, $145 million in domestic box office. In the US, the Super Mario Bros. Movie became the highest-grossing debut of 2023, taking over Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which debuted earlier this year at $106.1 million. It's also Illumination's highest-grossing debut in the US, taking over 2015's Minions. It also beats Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as the highest-grossing debut for a game adaptation domestically. The Sonic sequel generated $72.1 million during its opening weekend in 2022. The Mario film also became the biggest opening of 2023 globally, again beating Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And the biggest video game adaptation opening of all time, the previous record was held by 2016's Warcraft at $210 million. As a frame of reference, Variety noted that the Super Mario Bros. Movie cost Nintendo, Illumination and Universal around $100 million to make. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is the second theatrical movie based on Nintendo's mascot. The animated feature comes 30 years after the 1993 live-action film performed poorly at the box office. Video game cross-media animation projects show no sign of slowing down. Netflix's Arcane, based on League of Legends, has Season 2 in the works. The Last of Us Seasons 2 and 3 are also being underway. Sega also announced last year that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 will release in theaters in late 2024. Video game adaptations are doing very good at the box office, and at the same time Disney and DC saw some rapid declines from theater movies and TV shows. Let's see if the trend continues moving forward. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV, it's goodbye.